Hey there. So glad to be back today. Talking about another great finish for this, week, this time period, and something I was really excited about. So today we're going to talk about how I hacked my reading goals to really get started for the beginning of this year and so I could, have a good strong start. So here's the backstory. I have been a reader all my life. I think I told the story in a previous video about I used to get in trouble for my reading, in terms of falling asleep with my glasses on because I was reading and breaking pairs of glasses, missing curfews, having overdue stacks of overdue library books as a child because that's how much I read. And I think the family story is I started reading at age 3, so like literally one of the loves of my life. And then gets to rolling along, and quite frankly, I will say, because even through undergrad and college I was still pretty avid, but law school really and truly killed my ability to read for pleasure. And that was because in law school we're reading 200-300 pages a night of case law and all things about that, so there's no reading for pleasure with that. So my hack back then, all those years ago, was like, I still need to read. Is I think I may have pulled back to, trying to read a book, probably on breaks and things like that. But during the year while I was still in school, I literally just substituted magazines for books because they were quick. I could get through them quickly and feel like I did something. So that's how it is. So that's where my little magazine issue developed primarily. I think I always had magazine issue tendencies, if I recall my teenage years of all the lovely little stacks, but like it just escalated after law school because that was how I was getting my reading in. And so after that and life and still always reading, but just not at the veracity that I recall. I returned to trying to read some, and then got married, had kids, like all the things, right? All life happens, and just never quite feeling like I'd really tapped back in to my love for reading the way I really wanted to. I'm notorious for having 3, 4 books going at a time. And before someone says, "Oh, that's too distracting, you got to focus." Well, no, I think it taps into my need to address to deal with my unaddressed ADHD. But that never really was a problem for me. It was never about having too many books going at one time because I would eventually always finish them. But more recently, as things kind of developed with all the, shifting with work and starting a business and kids growing up and all of that, that really started messing with my ability to read for pleasure because I was reading for work again all the time. So I was reading books. It wasn't that I wasn't reading books. I was reading books, though, that I um, thought would help me develop professionally or to help my clients develop and all of that. So, and was I interested in the topics and stuff? Of course. But just reading a good old romance or a thriller or a mystery or something like that, it just wasn't happening. And I certainly wasn't reading intellectual stuff like this book. That was not happening. So, um, and then as like I said, life just really took its toll in more recent years. It wasn't just reading that it was taking a toll on, but all of my other hobbies that I was really engaged in, my gardening, my plants, my scrapbooking, all the things that basically I did for the creative outlet, were just like going to tank. They were just being tanked. And part of the recovery and the healing from all of that hustle, bustle, and burnout was literally tapping back into my my creative side deliberately. And there were several different things that I've done, but one that really I think I'm going to link most of this to was when I read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Um, 3 years? I don't know if it's been 3 years. I don't feel like it's been 3 years. I mean, a couple of years ago. It had been on my bookshelves for years, and I finally decided to read it and did not realize it was not a just read book. It was an action oriented, literally 12-week program. And I bought into it. I dove right into it at Christmas time of all times. I look back now, I still can't believe it, but that's how committed I was. And I did it. And that helped me to be able to start diving back into the creative side and all the things that I do. And so yes, I started getting back into more of my reading and having a mix of things, not just all of the professional development books, but also having some books for pleasure or for my own personal development, right? Things that I felt like I needed to read, and I don't regret that at all. But there was still this kind of hedge. So at the end of last year, I was like, I really want to get back in because, I've got my stack of, books I'm reading at there, and they're like normally 4 or 5 of them. And I'll pick up something and then I'd have a taste for it and then not. And then I'm just dragging. So it was at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. I don't know. Anyway, some weeks back, I came across something in my Instagram feed that I was like, oh my God, this is it. And so it was um, someone's take on how you can really help yourself to get through your to be read list of books over the course of the next year, this year, by identifying kind of like where you are. So there were like 6, 7, 8 options of kind of where you are and how you might want to approach your reading for the year. And so when I went through that, I decided I was a number 6 and a number 1. And I sent those away because I wanted the number 6 one to lead, which was about identifying some anchor books. So that's where you choose, 10 to 12 books that you're like, these are ones I'm absolutely going to read this year, and that's why they're called the anchor. And you may begin with those, and then leaving the flexibility to choose other things to add in as you just see fit. And the number 1 is, it's kind of weird because it seems like it's kind of the flip of that, which is having basically about having grace, giving yourself grace for the books that you haven't read, that you started and maybe just can't get yourself to finish. And it's like, it's okay. Like, put it to the side, move along, go choose something else. It also had uh, the the concept of anchors in it, but it wasn't the forefront of it, right? It was like, hey, you can have those, 10 books, limited to those so that you can have the more of the flexibility about choosing what your other options would be. So I wanted to have my 10 anchors be the focus. So that's why I decided it was number 6 and it was a number 1, and kind of mesh those together. And so that made me excited because I went to my, and I decided I was not going to go buy stuff for my anchor books. I went to my shelves where I have tons of books that I've not read, that I've been meaning to read, and decided to start there. So I chose my 10 books from my existing shelves, uh, and learned there were some other books I didn't realize I had bought that I was like, oh, look at that. I'll need to read those too. But they weren't my anchors. So I had already started Cast, but I wasn't like really getting into it. It was dragging. I was dragging my feet with it, and it was really making me crazy because I really wanted to read this book. But I also recognize that the subject matter could potentially get heavy and tough, and I was just having that mental block about, oh, this is going to be a heavy book. It's 400 pages, like all of these things, right? All these mental blocks that I put in my head about reading something intellectual that was lots of pages and all. Now, this is not to say I just read, 150-page fluff. I'm not. I can read. I can read some lengthy, but I just hadn't done it in such a long time. That's what was really kind of like helping me, just create these imaginary blocks. So that's when I was like, okay. And I don't remember where I got this second idea from, this second hack. But again, I must have been, just following some other uh, uh, book book people and reading their different things about how they're approaching their reading for the year. And there was just this simple thing that was like, oh my God. It was just like ta-da! And that was to set a reading goal per day. Say you're going to read X number of pages per day, and that's it. And then move along. And how you could flip your reading for the year to focus on that. So I made mine to read 15 pages a day. If I set that as a minimum goal, 15 pages a day, I multiplied that out and leaving off, I think I gave myself like 30 missed days, like a whole month of potentially missing 4 weeks or something like that. That got me to my 10, at least 10 to 11 books of the anchors, right? That would make sure that I got my anchors in and everything else is extra. And I was like, I don't know why that was so enlightening for me, but it was. And I was just like refreshed with that. So that's what I did. So I had already started Cast, but I started back reading it with a different mindset of I just need to get through 15 pages today. And then I was excited about that. And when I would accomplish that goal, I'm like, oh, I got my 50 pages in. And then I could go on about my business. I wasn't feeling guilty about, oh, I haven't read and all of this, or oh, I need to get back to my book. And then it became more exciting, right, for me to do that. The other hacks I did, so I gave myself a page minimum per day, recognizing I would miss a couple of days every month or whenever. I gave myself that. I also started shifting again because I knew that this was a heavy read. I was like, you cannot read this book late at night. So all of the things of reading to relax, at night, sure, I could do that, but I need to do that with a different book. For this anchor book and the subject matter and all the things, I knew I needed to be fresh. I needed to be alert so that I could be engaged and not falling asleep and be like, oh, wait, where was I? Like, I wanted to be able to truly engage with the book. So I shifted when I'd read, and I shifted it to late mornings, at perhaps early afternoons, but definitely with the goal of getting my reading done before the evening, and no reading of it late night. Now, there were a couple of exceptions, especially when I got to the end and I had missed a day or so for some reason, I don't know. But I had decided, I'm like, no, I'm going to be finished with this book by the end of the first week of February. And therefore, I stayed up to read, to catch up so that I would stay on track. So I did that probably 2 times, one time for sure, this final week, because I was like, I have to honor my uh, commitment to myself, and this is what I'm going to do. So that was what I did. So that helped a lot and actually helped me to be able to read. Then I was trying, I do not know why, I was trying to just read all polite and pretty, which, would mean just reading the book and not getting caught up in highlighting and flagging stuff because I was like, no, I just want to be able to read through it. I couldn't do it. I think I got through, I went back and I looked and I got to page 82 before my first flag shows up, right? Because I was like, I'm not going to be highlighting. I'm not going to be doing that. I don't write on my books. I don't do ink in my books for the most part. There are a few times when, and those are books that I read like every year that I might actually start, but even then I'm very particular. I don't like writing in my books, but I do highlight and I do flag. Well, then as I kept going, y'all, I just couldn't help myself. And so then you see all of these flags where I was like, oh my gosh, like, and then I started running out of those size flags and those colors. So then I had to go back to my handy day and day highlighter. And I was like, why are you trying to do something that you normally do? So that was the other piece was, you know what? There are some of your habits you just need to let continue because it's how I read certain texts. So me writing with highlighters and you know flags or what is it? I have some sticky notes over here. Sticky notes if I'm trying to make sure that I come back to something so that I can use it. Most of the time, if there's a sticky note like that, it's because I'm trying to come back to use it for content for something, and just lean into it. Like, I don't know why I was trying to read without my flags and my highlighters, but I did, and I didn't make it far. I did not make it far. Actually, when I go back, there are some highlights early on at the very beginning of two. So I don't know what I was thinking. So that's probably the third hack. So the first hack was to well, the very first one was to get on to identify a reading um, commitment that I could make to myself, right? So that was me choosing my anchor books and saying, this is what I want to do. And then the second one was making sure, identifying that I'm going to set a goal for X number of pages per day to read. Um, and then adjusting my time so that I could make sure I was fresh what I was reading, especially something like I said, more intellectual, something that's heavier. If I'm going to be reading a romance or a mystery novel, sure, I'll read that, later in the evening. And then the fourth thing being to, you know, own who I am and keep my highlighter and my sticky notes or whatever nearby for certain books that I'm reading. And then really just allow giving myself grace. Like, I know that doesn't sound like a hack, but it is. Once I relieve the pressure of the thing and just remember, like, you're doing this because you want to. Like, there is no professor standing over you. There is no client saying, I need you to read this before I do, like, which I don't do that anyways. I mean, I normally provide reading material to my clients, but this is for you. Like, so that was that fifth thing, which is just remember that this is for you and honor yourself by keeping that commitment. Literally. And once I leaned into that, there I was. Actually, this is a beautiful book. It's beautifully written, despite uh, the heaviness of the content of the subject matter. It's beautifully written, and I am like, oh my goodness, I have to read her other book. I did not put, which I already own. I do not have her other book on my anchors, and I'm not going to adjust my anchors, but I did put it down as an alternate if at some point I decide that my top 10 I might want to sub out something. I don't know. It will probably get read this year. Anyways, it's called The Warmth of Other Suns. It will probably get read. And I think it actually comes, yes, it comes before this book. So she wrote that one before this book. But I will definitely be reading it probably for the year ends. Maybe when I get a break and I want to be able to sit down and just like really kind of try to plow through something in a few weeks, as opposed to or less, as opposed to taking my time with it. I will not be treating it like it's one of my anchors. That's what I mean. So my anchors are what ones that I'm like, I'm committed to reading every single day. And anything else I read for pleasure at my whenever I feel like it. And just go with the flow. And I might decide to pick up something else and read it all the way through, in a couple of days. But there's no pressure for myself to do that because I decided that's what I want to do. And it has been so lovely. I was literally like, oh my God, I gotta hurry up. I'm almost done. Almost done. I mean, the pages just flew. When I set that goal and then recognized, and then literally I would be counting down, not because I'm like, oh, how much more do I have to read? But literally, oh my God, how much more do I have? Because I'm almost done. Like I am excited about having maintained the commitment and honored the commitment to myself to finish it. Now, is it, could I have finished this book, in a much shorter period of time? Absolutely. Absolutely. However, when I'm trying to train myself to reset my habit and my love for the reading, that was not the way I wanted to go. Like it wasn't working for me in that way. It felt too heavy. It felt too, like much like an obligation. And that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. So I love how I came about to making that shift to for this particular goal, and to remind you that whether it's hacking your reading list or setting goals for yourself in other ways, like it really can be that simple, right? Identify a system or an approach that works for you and that you feel aligned with, right? That you're excited about actually being able to implement. So that was that first piece. Secondly, when you recognize, okay, I've identified that, but it needs some tweaking. And don't be afraid to tweak it. It's your decision, it's your approach, it's your theme that you're trying to get done. So deciding to make that tweak. And for me, the tweak was, hey, let's focus on X number of pages per day to reach that goal. And then that just set off this whole other thing. So don't be afraid to tweak your own goals because they're yours. Do what you need to do to make it happen. What was number three? Another additional tweaks. So recognizing when something may bog you down, or you may not be getting the results that you want. And it could be as simple as changing the timing of when you get something done, of saying, you know what, I can't get that done with everything that's going on around the house. So once a week, I'm going to go to a coffee shop to work on that project, to read that book, certain, whatever it might be, right? There's going to be some additional tweak that may be environmental that you may need to do in order to you know uh, achieve the goal that you're still seeking, right? So that was the what was that the third thing. The fourth thing was, I forgot already. What was the fourth thing that I did? Oh, the habits that work for you. Everything doesn't need to be abandoned. There are sometimes things that work for you that you just need to go ahead and go with the flow with. If it's still aligned and it helps you achieve the goal and helps you to enjoy it, the process, stick with it, include it. And then lastly, for any and all things, give yourself some grace. I mean, my goodness, especially in today's world with everything that's going on, we all deserve a little grace. And if we can't give it to ourselves, who is going to do it for us? All right. So that's how I hacked my starting off my reading, uh, my not self-inflicted, but my self-imposed reading challenge for the year. and I'm super excited. I have my next book already chosen, my next anchor book chosen, and then I still have my stack of, you know, I won't call them fluff reads because they're not fluff reads, but other things that are not my anchors that I will be reading as well. And I'm excited to continue along this journey. So, this is probably going to be considered a part two of this whole goals and honoring your commitment to yourself. And I anticipate it'll be showing up again. That'll be another little series that'll be popping off again throughout the course of the year. I hope that this has been helpful, that you enjoy it. As always, reach out, and I'm still building things out for this channel. So I invite your input on things you might enjoy hearing about. This is definitely one of those behind the scenes things that I do for myself, and that could be helpful to others who are, doing life, achieving goals, trying to be a leader at home and in the community, and needing to make sure you manage yourself and your self-care, which I always encourage people to do. All right, that's it. I will check again with you tomorrow. Talk to you later.